All right, good evening. This is our first Law and Ordinance Committee meeting. We have a agenda of 3 items. The first is regarding parking, the 16-hour ordinance regarding parking. We want to have a discussion about our animal to cruelty ordinance, and we have some speakers about that I'm very excited about, as well as some residents who had some comments to share. A discussion about fees for our committee, sorry, I was going to get the actual word, the standing rules of council for fees. And then, as always, residents' comments. So,
I can't make it.
okay. And Chris, unfortunately, won't be able to be with us this evening. So the first ordinance that we'll be discussing tonight is the 16-hour ordinance. And this is in the city of Cincinnati, or excuse me, the city of Norwood. We have a 16-hour policy, which is unlike that in most other jurisdictions around us. It's usually 3 days. So I would love for Lieutenant Murphy, if you'd like to come up and just say a few words about what your experience has been with that in the community, what concerns people may have, and then we can have a discussion if we think that needs to be changed.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the ordinance is 16 hours. What I can tell you is that we rarely get a call for 16 hours. I've been here 26 years. Typically, the car is sat there already for days, but it does make perfect sense to make it a 48 or 72-hour ordinance. In theory, if I went out of town for the weekend, my car could be cited if we left one on the street. So it does make sense. I think it would also help us in, there's a lot of neighbor pettiness that goes on, and they will call every day. Now, it's a very small percentage, but if it were to become a 72-hour ordinance, I know our officers would be in favor of it. As a resident, I would be in favor of that again, because when we had all our kids at the house, we had 5 vehicles, so we could only put 2 in the driveway. And if a kid was out of town, or it's 16 hours is pretty restrictive. I get it in a sense, because they want vehicles to move on a daily basis, because we do have a lot of parking issues in Norwood, small side streets. Very few driveways. I don't know what the percentage is, but I'd say it's probably around half of people have driveways. So if it were to go to 72 hours or 48 hours even, I think that would be welcomed by the police department. But again, most of the calls we receive come after a substantial amount of time. I think most people are not calling at 16 hours. So just to make that clear, when people get upset about the 16-hour ordinance, and even then, if they call, let's say they did call it 16 hours, we're not necessarily going out and marking it right away. It might not get marked till the next day. So now you're over 24, and then still, if it's there the next day, now you're talking 48 hours later. The car's not moved, and it gets a citation. So, but most of these cars, when I receive a lot of the complaints through our website, and it'll say the car's been parked for a week, the car's been parked for 5 days without moving. It's things like that. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that. It's probably less than 1% are neighbor disputes where they're calling in every day because they're just upset because the neighbor's parking in front of their house.
Their favorite spot.
So, yeah. Right, their spot, right. That's their spot, and they want that spot. So, yeah, but I can answer any questions if you have any questions about the way we do the process and everything. And
I think it's just a smart idea to extend it, make it comparable to the communities around us, and I agree. In my experience, I haven't had people complain to me about anything like that unless it's been an extended period of time.
Right.
So I think it's fine.
I know on a side note, I did years ago, a friend of mine drove his daughter's car to my house. He ended up doing the responsible thing. He had a few too many drinks, got a ride home from somebody else. About 3 days later, he hadn't gotten his daughter's car, so my wife called the police on him. So it's like, it happens. It does happen where a car sits for a while, but 72 hours, I think, would be reasonable. I worked at Gulf Manor Police, and it was 48 hours, so somewhere in there is a nice window, I think. That gives you the weekend anyway. Like if you leave town Saturday morning or Friday night, you come home Monday and you've already got a ticket on your car if it's 48 hours, so.
The only thing I was trying to, I'm always trying to think of the other side. If there was issues, and, I'm thinking more like Ward 4, where you have very, very restricted parking. And, someone can never park their car because someone is sort of religiously leaving their car in that spot. I don't really know that a 16 versus 72 would really make a difference for those situations, but I was trying to think of, would making it longer be hurtful to some folks in the community that we might not think of off the top of our head?
I think 72 is reasonable.
Right.
As someone who's going on a weekend trip.
Yeah, I typically leave my car for longer than that, so, especially
I would
since the
think
pandemic.
if you're in a place where you've got restricted parking, your complaints are going to be about somebody blocking their driveway or
Right.
something,
Right.
which doesn't need a
Right.
time limit. It's more, otherwise it's just, first come, first serve on the street, I think. And
Yep.
that's kind of how it ought to be.
And in my career, again, wait 24 hours. Well, that's what we wait. We go back the next day at 24 hours. We don't go back at 16 hours even when we marked it. The same officer typically on the same shift will go back and follow up on it, so, because he's the one with the receipt of it, so.
So the folks here, what do we think, 48, 72?
I think 72 is a little more reasonable than 48.
I would go
I
with
think
72. Lieutenant, let's sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought that 72, I'm not sure, I think Cincinnati's 72.
I
So,
looked
and
at, I think St. Bernard. I looked at just
Yeah.
some municipalities around us.
I'm just assuming something happened at one time. Maybe we had 72.
That's in 2010.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, so, because I thought maybe
It
it was
was
way
well
back.
before that, though. It was when I got, they must have just like made some modifications to it. And then, but I remember when I got hired, it was 16 and being surprised.
Huh.
So,
Yeah, I have 8, 2010, and then it passed on 3, 2010.
but it is a problem. I mean, we're a very dense city with very limited street parking. And then most houses, again, are like mine, where I think when Norwood was zoned out, they didn't think that people would have 3 or 4 cars in a household. You had 1 car. So that's a big part of the problem, too.
Okay. So it sounds like we're in agreement. We'll make a request that it get moved. I guess not a request. We will make that and then take it back to full council. Okay. So then the next item is regarding the dog, specifically the cruelty to animal ordinance. And I'd like to invite our resident to speak first about her experience, if you would. And if you could just say your name for folks listening at home.
Okay, my name is Kathleen Bergman. My husband and I, Danny, we purchased a house here in Norwood this year because I wanted to live in a place that I believe can do better than our surroundings. I believe that Norwood does better, so I wanted to be part of I wanted to help invest in our city, which it was a very exciting time, but then our neighbors, they started to acquire dogs, which is normal. But then they started to acquire dogs at a rapid rate. They also left them out at all times on tethers, which by tether I mean very heavy chain, so that they could barely walk. And then at some point, 2 of the dogs were chained together by this much. And so every day I would hear choking, barking, hitting, yelling in the backyard, and it was just thoroughly disturbing. So I was like, okay, I am gonna call the police, the dog warden, and they're gonna know what to do. And they did. They were very helpful, and they told them what they needed to be doing, and they did unhook the two dogs from each other. So, sorry, I have a little anxiety.
You're doing great.
So there was the first phone call, and I saw some change, so I assumed that they were going to follow up on it and it was going to be fine. But then a few days afterward, it was all happening again. So I went through this process for the past 6 months and bothered you guys a lot for the past 6 months. And I realized that I wasn't getting anything done is because I'm looking at the Norwood Ordinance, the one that says that we do better for our animals. So the tethering laws are different here. I was following that. So I am sorry to have called you so much because apparently we don't have, I was told that the Norwood Police Department, it's their responsibility, but we haven't provided anything to them to even enforce this. So it's been a grueling 6 months of just kind of bothering people and calling. And at some point, I unfortunately was told that when I called dispatch for the dog warden, they said that if I knew it was you, we wouldn't have come out. They are doing the minimum, and you are now harassing the police and harassing your neighbors. So then I thought I was in trouble by the police for harassment. So then I started to get really confused. And then I started to look into the Ohio Revised Code. I have copies here, if anyone, but they are the bare minimum. I'm not even sure they care. But the ordinance in Norwood says we do care. So I think that we need to start talking about how a citizen like me can call and expect that these animals are going to be treated with dignity immediately and have the resources for them to do so. Because I don't think it's fair to say, well, you are not helping me enough, and they don't have, So I have questions about the dog warden. Is it connected to just one shelter, or is it connected to many? How many support opportunities are there? And if there's, any volunteer work that is necessary. But I have watched unspeakable suffering because I can't not look away. It's very prevalent. You can see it in my house. And I felt like my city and they couldn't help me. So I went to the landlord, and the landlord did what we couldn't do. And I didn't think that was necessary, and I shouldn't have to do that. So basically, I shouldn't have to watch dogs be abused when we already said we would do better. And we have dog wardens that will rescue, but we need more attention on this ordinance, I believe.
Thank you.
That's-
What I'd like to do is have the dog warden speak, and then if any of your questions aren't answered, let's make sure that we get those specifically answered.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, that definitely sounds good.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to invite Chief Taylor.
Yep. So it does get a little cloudy sometimes when it comes to the law. Dog wardens handle things on a state level and only. And so when it comes to ordinances, that's where your local police department will come in, intervene, and handle those ordinances. We have been discussing with the city of Cincinnati about handling certain ordinances for them. And we are definitely open to have a discussion with the mayor and the police chief about handling some of their ordinances on animal sides. we're out there, we're doing things anyways, and we'd love to handle it, but it's ultimately not our decision. It's up to them to make that decision, and basically what it turns into is a contractual basis to give us authority. So the dog wardens, we are appointed by the county commissioners, and we are sworn in by a judge, which gives us our state statutory arrest powers. And I sympathize with you, because when we go to these calls, there's times where we want to handle more than what we can. And the law does, it sucks sometimes. And, but we try to work with local law enforcement. We try to do everything that we possibly can. If there is something, a shred of something that we can get our feet in the door, we definitely do it. What else do you have?
For us a question?
Yeah, just if you give it to me, I'll.
Okay, so, it's a Norwood PD issue?
Ordinance, it would be, yes.
Okay. Or do we have anybody?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll answer your question.
I'm wondering, maybe before we do that, if you could just explain the process, if someone sees an animal being abused.
Yeah, so that's something that we also can intervene for. You know, we go to a special class in OPATA to become humane agents. We can do cruelty investigations. So if you see an animal being abused, that's good enough for us. We can definitely get involved. We can seize that animal, we can file charges, you know, and get that animal out of there.
Okay.
Tethering is difficult. That's not what we do. Barking dog complaints, not what we do. And so what we're finding that we're doing just for courtesy is sometimes if we go to a bar, we get them a lot for the city of Cincinnati, we'll just go anyways and just say, hey, we just explain to them, we give them that education to say, hey, can you tone this down? Everybody's working together to do the same stuff. Police officers, they are extremely busy handling other calls that are just definitely more violent in the city. And if we can help out in any which way, we definitely will. But any mistreatment, any abuse to an animal, you can definitely call us and we will come to that call.
Okay.
So you mentioned abuse, like specifically, and how that's different than like tethering. Like
The abuse, sorry.
the like abuse and neglect, obviously is also kind of falls on. Does that fall under it? Because one of the
Yep.
things that we had an issue with was that both in the summer when it was super hot, they would be out there all day,
Right.
And all night.
and in the winter, particularly our latest ice storm,
Yep.
they were
And I have
outside.
pictures and videos, but no one wanted them.
So that's a fine line. Yes, if we find the neglect is there, then we can seize the animal or we can file the charge that needs to be charged. But our state statute does not say they can't be tethered past 10 o'clock. It doesn't say that if it's above 80 degrees, they can't be outside, or if it's below 20 degrees, they have to be inside. We fall on that state level that as long as they have adequate, and adequate doesn't mean great, it means
It can
adequate.
be frozen water, is what apparently I've seen.
As long as they have adequate food, shelter, and water, and they have that, we're done there. Unless, now, granted, we have been in situations where we know it's super cold outside, we can't get a hold of anybody, we'll take the dogs. We will take them,
So
we'll contact
partially,
the owners,
if
yep,
you get in contact with the owners.
Yes.
And are able to say, hey, you need to do something.
Right.
That can be about
Or-
as far as you can go.
right.
Our neighbors were spoken to 6 times, and I don't understand why they didn't.
And that was
have it.
by us all 6
They
times?
just kept,
I think so.
Okay,
yes, I only called 6 times because at the 6th time, I was starting to harass you guys.
who said that?
I don't know, it was a man that came to the house that said he was,
Oh, so it wasn't from any from our department?
I don't remember because I was scared.
Okay, okay.
Because he was
was it-
on my porch.
Was it an officer?
I think it was the dog warden because that's who I call. I don't understand, like, he just told me that I was harassing them now. And I kept telling him that what I've seen, but it didn't seem to matter because it has to be that you see it.
Okay,
You have to see it, the
Well-
man kicking the dog. Me telling you isn't working.
right, unless you had,
I have video.
do you have video of the guy?
They've already been seized, so the dogs are.
Okay, All right.
I already figured that out.
So I'll get your information. I'll get your name. I will go back and look, and I'll see which officer went to your location and
Okay,
talked with you.
I'm sure he was just having a hard day and I call a lot, but what he said to me was very, I should probably not call the police when I need them, so. It just kind of, like, or the dog warden, or if like, they said that it was a Norwood PD issue and that I need to call them, so I did, and then I found out that they can't enforce it. So then I had to save the dogs somehow, some other way, myself.
And who sees these dogs?
I don't know. The landlord gave me a certain amount of information. They're all gone now. They were breeding there, they were fighting, they were doing a lot of things
Okay.
that I couldn't get on record. You know, it's kind of hard to see them do bad. I'm not trying to complain that.
No, I'm just curious, because if we didn't take it and Norwood PD didn't take them, I'm just curious of who did.
They may have moved them.
They may
to
Gotcha.
have moved them to another, like,
house in there
Yeah.
that they know of or something like that, yeah.
or,
Because
well,
because the landlord, their priority is to get the dogs off the
Well,
premises,
yes.
not to get them.
and they wanted to do it through eviction. And I asked them
Gotcha.
to not do it through eviction, and so they said that they would look for some shelters that they can probably, because they were going against their lease.
How many dogs were there?
5.
Five?
And puppies, I don't know how many puppies.
Well, that was one of the things is at one point there was 5 dogs.
And there's a pregnant dog.
And during the ice storm, that's when we saw, there was one that they would leave out at all times.
And it was the pregnant
She was
one.
pregnant.
And how long ago was it that they were taken, do you know?
Last week.
About last week,
Okay.
so I'm not sure. There was a pregnant mama, they left her outside and they kept the other dogs inside after a while. That's like, you every time you came, there was an improvement, but it just was so small. And it's almost like they really just didn't care if you
Right.
came back.
I think we did take those dogs.
Okay, yes?
I'm almost certain that this sounds pretty familiar.
Is
that
it,
I think we
Ward
did.
4?
What'd you say?
Ward 4 here in Norwood?
I don't know.
Okay,
off the
there
top
were
of my head.
5 of them,
Okay.
and there were possibly puppies.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was either last week, and I was so happy.
I believe that we took them, and the
Okay.
puppies are like in a foster program with us right now. So I'm almost certain that's,
Oh,
yeah.
That would be good to know.
No, but
We'll take it.
I just want to let you know that if one of my deputies came and he was disrespectful, I will find out who that was. Because I do not tolerate that.
It just
It's
felt-
professional,
I felt gaslit,
sure,
and it wasn't fun.
right.
So that's why I was scared to come here, but I know that you guys aren't trying to like do anything.
Don't ever be afraid to come and speak your mind. We're all here to help. We will listen. Sometimes
Most of you were kind.
we get bad apples from time to time.
I
but
understand.
we have to fix that, and we don't know how to fix it if it's not brought to our
Well,
attention.
then later on, there was another, because it kept happening, so she
Right.
called again, and someone else came and told her, no, keep calling, from the dog warden.
They said that they
You had
like
one, there's another that gave her the right advice.
Good.
yeah. So it was it was one guy, and we'll find out who he is, but he may have had a bad day, or he may also be a jerk.
Still, whether you have a bad day or not, there's no excuse for being unprofessional.
Okay, because that's not something I'm gonna forget being told.
Well,
But
We'll work through
but
it.
thank
We'll
you
work
so
through it.
much for the work that you have done, and I do appreciate it.
well, we try, and there is a little bit of misunderstanding with so many different townships within the city.
Right.
You know, a lot of people look at us and they say, "Hey, you guys are the animal cops. You do it." And they
Fix
don't.
this.
Yeah, they don't understand that little bit of legality that kind of deciphers what we can and can't do, and it's hard. And
Oh God, I can't imagine your job.
But
I'm
that's
sorry.
why we're here today.
Yes.
Is figure out how Norwood can do it.
How we can do better,
Yep.
you know, how we can help you do better here when you have a call to respond to in Norwood.
right.
Maybe we can help you quicker and better. I don't know.
Well, that would be great. Communication is key.
Yeah.
And as long as we can communicate with people, get the right information, we definitely will be doing what we need to do.
I'm pretty sure y'all know who I am.
That's okay. That's, seriously,
Yeah.
I
I think I recognize you. I recognize you. Both of you were very, very kind to me. So yeah, it's just, I just feel like resources would be great for
yep,
y'all.
yep, and we can do that. We can do that for you. And if you ever get an issue with any one of my deputies or any one of my dispatchers, I want to know about it firsthand.
Okay.
So, yep, for sure.
Okay. I'll give you my name after.
Okay.
Chief, I have a question. So
Yeah.
when you do take custody of the animals, if you could say where they go, is the city charged, is, like, what happens next?
So it just depends. If we
Okay.
seize the animal, what we do is we open up a cruelty investigation. We seize the animal. We deliver a 10-day probable cause hearing. And what that does is help for us to recoup some of that money if they want to try to fight to get their animal back. Plus, the judge looks at this and says, hey, you have enough probable cause. There's times where we do get our own warrants. We serve our own warrants. We just served a warrant and took an exotic animal from somebody. So, I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to that. But, we handle the legality of it. We have a very tight chain of evidence. And when it comes to an animal, it's difficult because an animal is a living, breathing thing. And technically, when it comes to evidence, you got to put it in place and it's locked up and signed in and signed out. Can't typically do that with an animal. We only allow certain people to interact with this animal, and they're only allowed to go to certain areas. That way we don't, because when we take this, it's serious. And we don't want to give an animal back to somebody that's abusive.
So if you seize an animal, there's a 10-day probable cause hearing. I
Yeah.
want to get my dog back, so then I have to go to court.
Yep.
And then there'll be court fees that I assume is to offset the cost for housing
Right.
the animal.
Yep, and that has to be paid up front to us, in that time, and if you don't, after the court hearing or whatever your charge is gonna be, still gotta pay it before you get your animal back.
Okay, and then if I don't want my animal back, and we're talking very, because
Right.
the idea of not giving my animal.
Well, there's two
You can't
things,
have my baby,
either
but-
you'll never get your animal back because the judge is gonna say, you're never gonna get this animal back, and you can never own animals for 5 years.
Okay,
Or, you've gotta pay that fee to get your animal back, and we won't release it until you do.
so then what happens to the animal? Do they stay for some limited amount of time?
We give you a certain amount of time, and after that amount of time, we go through all the legal process. We send you a certified letter. We get, everything possibly, documented that we've contacted you. If you fail to do that, our dog gets a clean bill of health and goes up for adoption.
Do all of your animals go to the care?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. Cincinnati Animal Care took over in August of 2020 from the SPCA, and they do a fantastic job of housing animals and their foster programs, and it's amazing.
and I'm sorry, August 2020, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Maybe I would like Lieutenant Murphy, if you could come up and talk specifically about the Norwood ordinances and how that works in relation to the dog warden. Thank you.
So specifically, I would like to apologize to Kat. I don't know, I looked for an incident where the police responded and I didn't see one, but you might have talked to somebody on the phone or something about, and there was a lot of confusion and miscommunication. This ordinance, I'm going to say it's new, but it was passed in 2018, so, and again, there are a lot of ordinances on the book. I have a lot of problems with this ordinance. I don't recall the police being involved when it was drafted, but from an evidentiary standpoint, I mean, like, there's a lot of things here that I would think that we would never be able to enforce. So I wouldn't mind if this would somehow stay in Law and Ordinance Committee and maybe try to rework this. I feel like I have an understanding. I felt like there was a woman in the South End who was arguing for this ordinance years ago, but I don't think I understood the scope of it. I mean, if you want it, does everybody have a copy of the ordinance?
I do.
Okay.
Parts of it here.
Okay, I mean, I have.
We have digital.
Everybody does? Okay, you guys have it? We don't. Oh, all right, if you're interested and you want to read along. You guys are good, though?
Yeah, I have them
You guys are good?
pulled up.
Do you want a copy for yourself? or-
Oh,
All right.
no.
All right, so my whole career, I've been told exactly what the chief just said. If they have shelter, food, and water, there's not a whole lot we can do when we get a call about the mistreatment. And we always defer to them, their judgment. We would typically go and make these calls for service. And then as a patrol officer, I'd be like, well, yeah, there's an awning, there's a food and water bowl, and that's the bare minimum you have to provide. I'm a dog lover. I mean, I've rescued dogs my whole life. I mean, and usually from the police department. I mean, we find them and then we drop them off the SPCA. I said, I want the rights of first refusal, and I think I've gotten 4 dogs that way. So I am a dog lover, let me tell you, first off, and my wife also. But there's just a lot of problems I have with this. I mean, I understand why people have to tether, just like we just talked about driveways. I mean, not everybody has a fenced-in yard. We are lucky enough to have a fenced-in yard, so I'm able to just open the door and let the dogs out, and then, call them back in, except for one dog. He's a Great Pyrenees. He knows to listen very well. So, but, I mean, if we go down here, I highlighted for the people who have my copy, but it says no dog shall be outside tethered for more than 8 hours in a 24-hour period. We would never be able to enforce that, ever. I mean, we just wouldn't. We would have no idea of knowing if that dog went in for a half hour 5 different times.
But the neighbor would know.
So. Well, I'm just saying though, but you would
And
have to have a
it's
video.
not too,
I'm just telling you when you're introducing it in a court standpoint.
Yeah.
You would have to have a video, 8 hours of seeing that dog for 8 solid hours outside. I mean, we would have no way, it's just a loser. I mean, I don't know how you,
And you really can't tie a police officer up for 8 hours.
right, we can't watch, right. And I get it, it's, you shouldn't leave your dog. I would never leave my dog outside for 8 hours untethered. But that's just, it's poorly, in my opinion, as a police officer, it's poorly written. And there's just no way, like when we mark a tire on a car, well, we don't mark tires anymore.
We mark the concrete.
Scratch that, right? We're not allowed to touch the car, but it happens on Montgomery Road. There's a couple places where it's 2 hours maximum parking. And people call because tenants will be parked there, specifically like across from Little Caesars. And we have to go and do the tire markings like we would for a 16-hour unreasonable, and then come back 2 hours later. And then that's our evidence that the car did not move. In this case, there'd be no way we could see if that dog didn't go in, even for 5 minutes. I mean, we would have no knowledge of that. So right away, and that's the first part of the ordinance, is really, I just don't think you'd be able to enforce that. Between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., they can't be tethered at all. As a dog owner, I would like to see that can't be tethered for more than 15 minutes or maybe more than a half an hour. I mean, just specifically this Sunday, I came home from the Super Bowl party I was at, got home at like 10:45, boom, opened the back door for our dogs to go out and use the bathroom before they went to bed with us. They were outside about 15 minutes or whatever, came back in. I don't know how fair that is to the dog if somebody were to call, a neighbor were to call and say, this dog is tethered outside at 10:35. I mean, that, to me, that seems a little unreasonable. Now, again, if you put a time limit on it, and that wouldn't be hard to do. I mean, 15 minutes, the officer could come and sit in front of the house and hear the dog barking for 15 minutes, knowing they're outside tethered, because we've already witnessed that. But my understanding would be it would be much like the car situation. Cat would probably call if the dog was out there for like an hour or two, I would assume. It wouldn't be right at 15 minutes. I'm calling, the dog's been out longer than 15 minutes.
No, I called at like
Right.
hour 12.
No, right. So, but it does give us a little bit of chance to enforce that. I don't know. I mean, that's just my recommendation. And then you go to the next one, accumulation of feces or other waste. What's an accumulation? I mean, what?
Where are you at? I'm sorry.
It's down on I, when a dog is tethered outdoors. I'm sorry, D. So you've got D and then,
Okay.
and then so.
So 1D, in any area
Yeah, so a
with
dog can't be
accumulation.
tethered where there's accumulation of feces. I can tell you in the winter, my backyard has a lot more
It's an
feces
accumulation.
than in the summer. So, and that's why, yeah, I mean, I make sure that their paws are cleaned off because I assume that accumulation of feces is coming into my house at some point. So, but I don't know, that's so, what's an accumulation? I mean,
Yeah.
no, I'm just saying from a,
I
Yeah, I'm
just
not
want to say,
attacking-
I understand your point too, but Lieutenant is looking at it from being able to prove this in
Right.
a court of law.
right, if we cite somebody. you
And
know.
when you,
sounds like nobody can help.
No, that's
people
not
can
it. We're
help
trying to
it.
actually make this tighter.
yeah,
It needs to be tighter,
Okay.
because right
So
now
it
it's
is
so
enforceable.
open-ended, you could get a first-year law student to defend
I
any
mean,
client we
I've
cite.
already edited it myself.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
writer.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we just, what we're trying to do is come up with an enforceable ordinance.
Right.
Not something that's so open-ended that we can't.
Right,
So
as soon as I
that's
read
the
this,
end
I
goal.
thought
It
there's
might
just
mean
no
some
way to
of
get a
it-
conviction.
Some of it can't stay because there's no way of enforcing it, but it also might mean that we can put parameters around some of these things that do make it enforceable. And will at least go part of the way to, doing better.
Right.
You know?
Right,
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I compared my own dog to the neighbor's dogs, and there's no comparison.
right, I
There's zero
completely,
comparison there.
yeah. No, I
Like,
completely
accumulation of
understand,
feces
right.
was
Right.
very- I'm sorry.
No, I get it, and again, this is no way I'm just attacking this ordinance, that's all. This
And
ordinance,
how could it be
that's
measurable?
all I'm doing, right? Because
This room,
we want to help, but if we go and we, and I look at this, like, there's not much on here actually that I would feel very comfortable issuing a citation for.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there's not much. And again, some of it was our ignorance. We didn't know. I talked to officers like, we didn't know this was on the books.
And
Then
it's already a mess.
there's also some things too where the health department handles it. And like instantly when I heard about this, and I'm like, well, this is a health department issue. It's not a police issue. But it is a police issue. I mean, it says right here, we can issue a citation for this. So another part of the ordinance that I would like to see is, again, I'm a dog lover. The dog can't be outside tethered if it's over 89 degrees. I mean, you wouldn't be able to let your dog outside during the day in the summer. I mean, to me, again, it needs a time, I think. Maybe 15, 30 minutes or something. I don't know, but my dogs are outside in the summer when it's, I've got one that lays on the deck when it's 100 degrees. I mean, she loves laying in the sun. She's older and she just loves the sunshine. But again, they're not tethered. This is specifically talking about a tethered dog, but now you're talking about, somebody doesn't have the ability to have a fenced-in yard, and their only option is to tether the dog. I guess they could stand out there with their dog.
Have them
but-
on a leash?
Yeah,
Which,
in the backyard. That's a possibility. But I would like to see a little time if it were me, again, I keep saying this, a dog lover. I don't think it's unreasonable at 89 degrees that a dog be outside. Our dogs are, and we take care of them, we love them. And on the flip side, it's got the cold weather too. A dog can be outside for a short period of time, just like us. To say that a dog can't be tethered outside when it's under 20 degrees Fahrenheit, it's just, to me, again, it's a little unreasonable. There should be a time parameter. Should a dog be outside all night? No. On a deck, on a porch, or whatever it was that Kat talked about. But can it be outside for 20 minutes? I think so. I mean, I know I go to our farm in Fayetteville, and I'll stand in the woods or sit in the woods for like 6 hours at a time with just a coat too. And I mean, I'm cold, yeah, I'm cold, but I'm just saying 20 minutes is not that bad. I mean, my Great Pyrenees does not want to come in. I mean, he would stay out there all night. If he didn't bark, he would stay out there all night because that's what he's built for. My lab, she only wants to do her business. In 5 minutes, she's at the door scratching to come in. So, but I would like to see time added there. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just like on the heat part. And I wouldn't mind actually, if we're talking about the heat, 20 degrees is cold. But I don't think 89 is that cold, or I'm sorry, that hot. I mean, it's hot, don't get me wrong, but I think that could go,
Yeah, I'm curious, I
Up a
have a
little bit.
sense that this ordinance came from somewhere, but I don't know where it came
Okay.
from. And I'm wondering if, so certainly for you and I, 89 is not that hot, but for a
Right.
dog who can't sweat, that might
No,
be, so
I-
it might be that is
Sure.
from,
sure, I get that, right?
I believe it went through the Housing, Health and Public Safety Committee during the time that, before it was passed in 2018. So I know I wasn't in that committee, but I do know that it went through that committee before we voted on it.
okay.
Yeah.
But I don't know what processes they went through to.
Yeah, I mean, on its face, it actually looks good, but it's just,
It's
it's
problematic.
just hard, in my opinion, professional opinion, to enforce many aspects of this ordinance with, to
So-
get the evidence anyway.
Can
I
you-
have no problem with the rest of the ordinance, the tethering, the length and everything, and that the weight, the weight is in there, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it talks about it can't be more than 1/8 of the dog's body weight, so a real thick, heavy chain typically would be, I mean, for most dogs, I mean, a chain can be pretty heavy. You can't tether with a choke collar or a pinch collar. I'm fine with that. But there's a lot of, but those issues I brought up are issues I wouldn't mind seeing addressed. And I'm not gonna lie, we, in a sense, I mean, we had an ordinance that we could have enforced if she called and said, these dogs are out and it's 2 a.m. They're chained out. I mean, so, you could have, yeah. And we could have, we, well, they might, I'm thinking they might not have known about this ordinance is what I was
The
trying,
hope is they would in the future.
they would in the future, but hopefully, again, I've discussed it with some officers and I discussed it with our chief. We would like to see this ordinance amended. Again, because it's not unreasonable. Again, I worked second shift for my first 13 years here. I got off at 11 o'clock. And every night when I got off, my dogs would come to the door, everybody else is sleeping, and I'd let them outside for a while, you know. Again, now they had a yard to run around in, but if my only option was to tether them outside so they could, you know, do the
So-
business and stuff.
That's not why they were tethered outside.
I know, but he's, there's a reason.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I keep, I
It's all right.
So can you talk a little bit about the process if a resident has a concern about a dog either being out too long or barking or being abused?
Yeah, so we do get a lot of, our main complaint is barking dogs and then dogs running at large. And those, we handle the barking dogs. I think you guys handle the running. We usually typically ask you to cite for the running at large, and then the unlicensed dog, they will cite for that because it's a Hamilton County license. But yeah, you simply call our dispatch center.
So first call,
First call you can
Should
make
be-
to us. I
should
mean,
be-
and then
should-
we can actually, if Kat were to call and say, hey, these dogs are, you know, I've got video of these dogs being kicked. I've got videos of them beating them with sticks or something like that. That is their investigation, but that doesn't mean that we can't get called and respond to the scene, talk to, I don't know, is Kat okay?
Kat's fine.
Okay, talk to Kat, and then get a hold of the dog warden, the you know, and have them come out.
so
Or the
you can be a
person,
conduit?
we can,
or
yeah, we
could
are
you,
pretty
should
often,
you?
actually.
Okay.
It just depends. I mean, it happens, I think it happens a lot, both ways. Barking dog is all us.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get involved with that unless we get there and then we see conditions that we like, oh, this is not good. We'll call them and say, hey, can you do a follow-up visit here and just make sure that everything's, you know, up to snuff here with the legalities of taking care of a dog. and then the dogs at large. Those are our two primary complaints. I think if you're ever on Norwood Strong, you see dogs at large every day. But yeah, we do handle barking dogs, and we can issue citations for that. The at-large, we will request their assistance to come and take care of the dog if we don't know who the owner is. They will come and pick up the dog at our police station, and then we try to share it on one of our social media pages so that the owner can hopefully see the dog and then go pick it up from them.
So, right now, where are you mostly finding that you're giving citations? Or are you not giving any citations under the ordinance?
This ordinance, you talking about this, I'm only talking about specifically this cruelty part about the tethering. All the other cruelty they handle. We don't handle really any cruelty. This ordinance was added, and I don't think that we have probably ever issued a citation for this tethering ordinance.
Okay.
At least
So-
I've not heard of one.
Because this ordinance isn't just
heard
about
of one?
tethering.
It's
Yeah.
upsettingly,
It's not just about tethering. But again, because of the state law, we will cede authority to them.
Okay.
Because again,
So that's
if
the only
they-
thing you would,
if they have to take custody and care of the dog, we don't have the, if I was dispatched to somebody's house and if Kat showed me a video of the owner just pounding at the dog and beating the dog, yeah, I would put that dog in my cruiser. I would, and then I would let these guys handle the investigation and the citations. We can take action, and then again, be, like you said, the conduit for them to do their investigation. We don't get many animal cruelty complaints, though. We get a lot of complaints about dogs just not being well cared for. But I don't really recall my career, like, I don't know, maybe a few times what most people, when they think of animal cruelty, like the beating and the
and also the
terrible.
kind of like silent kind that we don't get to see.
Oh,
Or-
sure,
'cause
sure.
Can I speak again to you after him, please?
of course.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, this, when you look at this ordinance, it's actually an addendum, I believe. 50507 is the cruelty to animals, and then 5050701 is the cruelty to companion animals. It's specifically, all it addresses is tethering. And that's the only thing we could have enforced that night,
Okay.
was the tethering of the dogs.
First portion, disperse.
So,
Because it starts with one, everything.
Okay.
I think there's a couple things that we need to do here, and we can't do it here right now. But one is to tighten this ordinance and make it, what parts of it enforceable that we can, and get rid of the parts that we can't. I think the other thing is we gotta come up with a way when council passes ordinances that involves police, enforcing those particular ordinances, we gotta get a better stream of communication between
Yeah.
us so that you all can know when to expect. We pass so many things and most of them honestly don't affect what the police department does on any kind of regular basis, but occasionally we do have one of these come through.
Right.
And it's wrong of me, but I just kind of expect that everybody knows.
and again, you've been around a while.
Yeah.
It may have gotten passed on to us in an email, and then the email gets put in a sub-file,
Sure.
and you never address it because nobody ever calls about it,
Right.
So, and then somebody calls about it, and the officers don't know that we can do more than just food, water, and shelter. We have a specific ordinance that talks about tethering. So again, we kind of, if we were called, I didn't see actually where we responded to the address, but it sounds like she may have talked to somebody on the phone and said, we can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
That's them. That person was wrong. And we're wrong sometimes. We get bad advice. It happens. We've got somebody right now with a quad running around parts of Norwood, and that's not legal. But apparently some officer told them that, yeah, if you put this on or this on it, it could be legal. But anyway, we get bad advice sometimes.
Yeah.
Can you think of suggestions for how we can better coordinate with the dog warden for residents to know? Because it sounds like one easy answer is just to start with a call to the Norwood Police, and then you say, yes, this is us,
Right.
or we will respond, but this part is for the
Well,
dog warden? Or there are parts
mean, the-
where they should just call the dog warden first?
Well, the good thing is that we use the same dispatchers now.
Oh.
So before, if you called, our dispatchers would have probably said, that's a dog warden issue. You have to call the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, dispatch anyway, Hamilton County Dispatch Center. But hopefully those people, again, know, but I would like us actually to be involved, because when I was in the patrol division, I liked being on scene when they were there. Some people, I'm assuming, don't treat these officers like officers sometimes, because they think they just deal with animals. They're not on the same level, but they go to the same schooling and everything that all of us do. So I liked always being there, assisting them with whatever they were doing. So I think we work well together. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it could, we communicate well, I think. Like in this case, now that he's aware, I'm sure you can tell your officers that if somebody calls about tethering, you can say, well, and it sounds like they did, that's a specific Norwood ordinance. And then instead of telling the resident to call us, they can get on the radio and then communicate directly to us and ask us to come to the scene. And then we can come with this ordinance in tow and say, John Smith, you have to take this dog inside right now because you're violating this section of this ordinance. So, simple as that. I mean,
Is there a charge, and maybe I think we were chatting about that before the meeting, if you do seize an animal, if you put it in your cruiser, or if they take it, who gets billed for that?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, so if we find a dog running at large, and you guys collect it from us, and you never find an owner, does anybody ever get charged with it?
They don't. If we can't find the owner, we have a 3-day straight hold. So we do our due diligence by putting that animal out there everywhere. And if nobody reclaims that animal, the dog goes up for adoption. It goes through a medical, gets a clean bill of health, and it goes up for adoption. So,
And then, in the other sense, if we were there, like the example I gave, if I saw somebody literally physically performing
Assaulting.
cruelty to animals, abusing a dog or a cat, in theory, yeah, I would be seizing it, but I would just be seizing it for them. I mean, we have no capability of housing animals, so then it would go back to their part where if the owner would be cited, and then the owner would be responsible for the payment of, if they got their animal back, paying now that's not associated with the fines, that's just the housing and care of the animal. So,
Okay. I think I don't have any other questions for you, Lieutenant. Kat, if you had additional questions?
Yep.
I just have a couple of comments.
Do you need me up here?
Actually, I would like to talk to you.
Oh, okay. All right.
With respect, I think that when you were talking about the ordinance, you literally kept mentioning your own dogs and comparing all dogs to your dogs. And my neighbor's dogs were not my lab. They were fighting dogs. They didn't have any fur to withstand the winter. They're also not cars that you mark either. So like the kind of language you were using about the dogs did not make me feel confident.
Well, but
about-
again, I mean, you can't, do you dispute, I mean, I guess we'll just have a discussion here, is that all right? Yeah. Do you dispute that because of the living arrangements that some dog animals have, or dog owners have, that they might have to let their dog out after 10 p.m. though?
Yes, but not to chain up in a heavy chain and leave there. I can tell you like 25 minutes is fine. My family did that growing up, etc.
Right.
Also, my family abused dogs when I was a kid, so I know what it looks like. I also know what the silent part looks like. The beating, the video I have is not of them beating the dog. I have video of the dog looking up at me, asking me for help. What I do see are things that I can't get video of. And abuse is not, you don't have to act on it when it's at its absolute worst. And I feel like that's when we act on it, that's when we call about it, and I think that we need to do better than that.
Sure.
Abuse is more visible earlier, we just don't see it. We're not trying to see it. And I think that if we try, we will. So I'm just saying that.
Well, but again, I was just specifically discussing the tethering though, and the fact that 15 minutes, 20 minutes is
Right.
not unreasonable in that's just my opinion, and that's why I think it needs to be discussed some more.
Okay.
And you can help in that discussion, I think,
I would love
and residents will be allowed to discuss. But again, I just think that 15 minutes is not unreasonable
Which I don't.
to tether a dog out.
Right, but we're not here for that.
I know, but again, it's the only way we could probably enforce it. I mean, it,
Which breaks my heart a little bit.
yeah, well, I mean, it, you know.
It is what it is.
I mean,
But I think if it's a 15-minute, and we're just going to pick that number.
Sure.
If it's a 15-minute thing, that will prevent the dog from being out all night.
Right.
Because that's enforceable.
Okay.
Whereas if it's all night, we don't necessarily know. And I'm not saying that that's where we're going to land as a committee.
Correct.
But if we have some of these just aren't measurable, well, I guess overnight is measurable, but it's not enforceable.
Okay,
So
I
if we
guess,
can give it something, some teeth that they can actually act on. Because
Right.
right now, they can't act on dog left out
and I
overnight.
think this might be what I'm upset about, is that there was left open that hole, that you guys couldn't. fill.
I'm sorry, what, it was left open?
Oh, this was left open that you guys didn't even know to enforce it like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would be honest, when
I can't believe
I got called, I looked it up and I was like, wow, I didn't know that ordinance was on the
So
book for the
I was
police to
telling you,
enforce.
thinking that that's what I was
Right.
enforcing, and so.
Well, and in a way, I mean,
And also, I'm just worried about abuse
Sure,
being
sure.
seen only when it's at its worst.
Right.
I think that it would be nice to maybe have a way to spot it earlier before suffering continues, because if we can do that, we're better people.
sure. And that's obviously a whole nother discussion. You know, I mean, it's, you know, trust me, I mean, I'm not happy with the way some of my neighbors, you know. I mean, there's a standard of care, and some do the bare minimum and some don't, you know, so, and it's terrible. But yeah, I think it would be really, really great, though, to leave, or to address this in Law and Ordinance Committee again, and then maybe even take it to the Committee of the Whole at some point to have a discussion about, I'm sorry, Mr. Gary left, he might have had some information, and he might actually be coming back in, but about, again, just the tightening it up, making it easier for us to enforce, or even, I mean, they made the recommendation that we could work in conjunction with them with some type of, additional contractional where they would enforce this for us too. I don't know. Because my question also was, what if I go to John Smith's house, and this happens a lot on other things, turn your music down, we're getting complaints from your neighbors, and they just look through the door at us, you know?
Can you, in situations like that, can you cite them?
Well, we can cite them, but I mean, that doesn't mean, like, we would have, like, what do we do if the dog's outside and the person just ignores us?
I understand. but
we would
there
have to
comes a
seize
point
it.
when there's enough citations on a person that it makes a difference, like when they're being called to court to defend.
Oh, sure,
You
sure.
know?
Right.
So at that
Right.
moment, it's not always like
Right.
evident, and I know that's frustrating to a lot of
Right.
citizens too, because there are oftentimes when people ask me, what can I do? And I'm like, you just have to keep calling and telling the
Yeah.
police, because that gives you
Right.
your
I mean,
data
we have
that
a
you need.
record. I mean, we obviously would be able to show, I mean, it's the proverbial, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, we would be able to show, we came out to 1, 2, 3, 4 Main Street 7 times before we actually took action, and we cautioned them. And that does happen. I mean,
What are we cautioning? Like, sometimes I wonder, are we cautioning on the beginning of abuse? Or the second steps? But what's a caution?
Well, you're still gonna be able to, for us, we have to decipher that legality. So if we see something and it doesn't fall under that legality, yeah, like I said, emotion and our hearts get in the way, but we have to understand that, we also have to understand people's rights, and we can't violate those.
Right.
And so I can't, just because I see something that's not quite right, doesn't necessarily give me the legality to step in there. I mean, by all means, we do everything that we can, and it's frustrating. How the law is written. If we get just that little bit, we will take action, but sometimes we know when we walk away, we know, but we just legally can't, there's nothing we can enforce.
Right.
And it's tough, it's rough, so. But we'd be happy to sit and help you guys tighten this up. We'd be
Yeah,
happy to work
that'd be
with
great,
Norwood
yeah.
in any of this. If we're getting called in these situations, we'd love to do it. This is what we do. Why tie up a police officer in the community, when we're out here anyways?
Yeah.
So,
My sort of suggestion at this point, I would love for us to have another discussion where if there are more community people who have different thoughts that would want to share, in this moment, I'm liking having some more, the tightness to have more time-limited things that would be enforceable. But other community residents might have very different perspectives, and I think that would be important to invite those voices as well. So I'd like for us to schedule another meeting where you guys could come again and we could, and have Tim Gary, he's works in our law department, to make sure that as we're having these discussions that what we think is good law is good legislation. So would anyone else like to talk about the dog ordinance at this time, or can we say we'll have the next meeting?
Could I ask you afterwards about the outcome of the meeting?
I would have to look, so,
I'll have to ask them.
Get the information.
yeah, I would have to look and see the information, and I have no way to do that right this second.
So could you get back to me?
Yeah, you definitely can ask for me. You can definitely call and just ask for me directly. So, and I will be there tomorrow, so, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate everyone coming and sharing and being so respectful and thoughtful. I really appreciate that. Should we go ahead and try to find a time when you guys would all be available? And we can hope that Chris could make it? Would like 2 weeks be enough time? The week of the 28th?
And it would be at 6 o'clock again?
It could be. We can, that works for me. Does that work for
So that'd
other
be-
folks? We could do like Tuesday, the 1st of March at 6.
That works for me.
That works for Alexis. Works for Eric.
Yeah.
That works for Kat. Awesome. All right, I'm putting it on my calendar, and I will send emails to everyone. Law.
Can I ask you one question, Lieutenant Murphy? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I do see in the ordinance, it says when no owner or custodian or keeper of the dog is present on the premises. Is there a way for you to ticket if they don't answer the door? Since like, that would indicate they're not there?
We would.
I don't know the mechanics of ticketing
It
here.
would be somewhat, I mean, we could issue a warrant, but it would still,
Okay.
we would have to establish ownership of the animal.
And
So
the-
that might take a while,
Okay.
just because somebody, if it's a two-family house and neither person is answering the door, who actually owns the
good
animal
question.
that's outside?
Got it.
But it could, yeah, we can issue warrants for people if they don't.
If they don't
I mean,
answer.
If we witness a violation, yeah, we can issue a warrant for that person based on whatever charge, ordinance that they're in violation of. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering. I didn't want another toothless.
Yeah, but if
Line.
it's like, again, if it comes down to like when Pat called, if it's 15 degrees out and it is like some type of short-haired dog and it's not equipped to be outside in that kind of cold, and we can look at the dog and see that it's in distress. I mean,
Yeah.
we could seize that dog without even notifying
Okay.
the owner, just like that they would, and then we would just call them and be like, hey, we have a dog that we would need, that we would need to come transport, so,
Thank you. That was my only question.
yeah.
Fantastic. All right, thank you very much. All right, and then our last, I think, should be a quick discussion. So this was from the Standing Rules of Council, and the verbiage is, whoops. Any person upon request and payment of a reasonable fee to be determined by the clerk of council may obtain reasonable advance notification of all meetings. So the issue was a reasonable fee. And Reardon had concerns about that. Now, this was from it keeps reloading.
Is it 2006?
2006. So it's post-email world. There it is. And so I did ask TA, and he said that he's always, in however many years, he's done it twice. Someone called and said, hey, I need the agenda, and he just copied it and stuck it in the mail and didn't even charge. I did do a little bit of looking around in other communities. Most don't say what they do. Some do it for free, and then a couple have pretty substantial fees involved, which I just thought was amusing. One, you had to pay up front. Let's see if I can find it. It was really funny. You had to pay like $52 up front, and
For copies?
For something that
Yeah,
should be
here it
posted
is.
regularly.
That's not
this is for
good.
Houston, Texas. To receive an agenda, please send a check or money order for $52 for a one-year subscription.
Oh.
Made payable.
Dollar a week.
Another is the city charges $25 for the agenda plus $4 for mailing. So that does exist in some places. That seems a little excessive.
This helps us understand.
Another one, Ghana, Ohio, copies according to state regulations on charges, including 10 cents per page, up to 50 pages, and $1 per CD, mailing charges if applicable. So,
So this is specifically in regards to council agendas.
correct, the piece that's in our committee is for the standing rules of council.
Right. But it's for copy, is it all public records requests that come through, or is it just for agenda?
It just says reasonable advance notification of all meetings, at which any specific
But
type of public business is to be
To me,
discussed.
that's a single
Yeah.
piece of paper.
Right.
Now, if people were asking for full copies of every document that
From
we go through
2010.
during a meeting and they wanted it mailed to them,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, depending on the time of year, it might be 100 pages.
Right.
So that, I could see wanting to like charge, not that we'd have to, but I could see where that this was probably in there for things like that. But as you said, now with email, most people I don't think would want a hard copy. They probably just want a PDF and, so I don't know. To me, it's almost like either get rid of it and we just say that we're going to give people copies of stuff, or we have to put tighter parameters on amounts of copies.
I mean,
Yeah, I think those are exactly our two choices.
I think digital copies should be free, if I'm being honest. And then I feel like
Oh,
the
yeah.
10 cents per page is,
Do we?
if they want a hard copy, would probably be reasonable. I know that's how most public buildings do it. If you do a records request, or, I mean, I would consider this similar to a records request. It's not the same, but.
Yeah.
Do we want to specifically, and again, according to, I think I also talked to Tim Gary about it, that this happens very rarely, because
Right.
most people just have it emailed. But I do,
I mean, on the off chance someone wants like 2,000 pages or something.
but it's my understanding that there wouldn't be 2,000, because it is just the notice of Because this is
I know, does
not
that, it
public
says may
records.
or may not, right? May include but not limited to mailing the agenda of meetings to all subscribers on a mailing list. May include but not limited to. That's odd language, I feel like.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I'm fine with 3 if everyone else is fine with 3.
I'm fine with just letting people have a copy of the agenda.
Okay, so.
Do
what
we want to
would-
limit it to an agenda then?
I mean, we could.
So,
Any other document requests are subject to
That might be.
10 cent a page fee or 5 cent a page fee or plus postage, I don't know.
because it does say advanced notice. An advanced notice would simply be an agenda.
Would be an agenda. yeah.
So that would not be any supporting documents, that would be one page.
Yeah, I'd say then that we just do it for free.
So we just get rid of
I'd be fine
that
with
language. Okay. My email keeps reloading and then it keeps booting me. See, it did it again. Yours doesn't do that.
No, mine's not. I'm on Chrome though. Are you?
I'm on Chrome. Okay. All right, so I will make that, so we'll just remove the wording
We could just
of
say.
reasonable fees. All right. I think that's everything.
Sweet.
A little after 7:15, we'll try to make it tighter next time, but
All right, we had a lot to talk about.
we had a really good conversation. So thank you very much, and we are adjourned.